come across this story at a time we're heading into the busy holiday travel season, right? And then to find out that we are facing an air traffic controller shortage in this country. As I said, I was expecting this might come out of the U.S. We know that's been a recurring issue there. And the more I read about this, the more I see it's not only there. Obviously, it's not only here either. It's happening in a lot of places. So I thought we'd try to find out more, because it turns out that when you're 200 people short and you're heading into the busy season of all, that probably is a concern. Dennis Wyche is a former air traffic controller. He's been in the business, or was, for 35 years. Mr. Wyche, thanks so much for coming on. Look, when you see this story, you see a headline like this, are you concerned?
A little concerned. We've been short for as long as I've been an air traffic controller. 35 years. I was hired. We were short, and we still are.
So I don't know if it's fair to ask what brings this on. If it's been going on forever, it's not anything new that's happening. Why does this happen?
Why do shortages happen?
Yeah, on a regular basis in this industry.
It's very hard to train air traffic controllers. It's very hard to select air traffic controllers. The whole process of qualifying an air traffic controller, from getting in the door to a qualified controller, takes a very long time. The passing grade is very high, and it's very hard to also select a person who we don't know can be an air traffic controller to be an air traffic controller. So if you pick someone off the street and say, I think you'll be a good air traffic controller, there's very, very few, there's no good test to say you will be an air traffic controller when we're done training you.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about what it takes. So you mentioned I think I also read it's a very long process, right? I can decide today I want to, go ahead and become an air traffic controller. What's involved and how long would it take?
So, it's a long process just to get selected for the training. You have to go through passing an aptitude test, which is the last I knew was called a FEAST test, which is a European Air Traffic Services test, and that's basically a test of whether you can visualize. And then once you pass that within the top 5%, 3%, whatever it takes to get an interview, you get an interview. You pass the interview, and then you go to a second interview, and then you may or may not be selected for air traffic control training. At that point, they divide you into two streams of what's called instrument control or visual control, which would send you into an air traffic control tower, or instrument control, IFR, would send you to an air traffic control center, which we would call a surveillance controller or radar controller. And at that point, then you start your training. And the basic training, 3-4 months of theory, and you have to pass every exam you take with 80%. And if you fail, you're out. And then once you pass your theory, then you go into simulation training as part of it. Sort of transitions into simulation training, and then you're going to go to on-the-job training, all of which can take 2 years, 2.5 years.
Wow. I just as you said that, I thought to myself, if you fail that first part, the theory part, you said you're out. You don't get a second chance here? You're just done?
Well, no, you can fail an exam. You get a rewrite, but you're not going to get 3 rewrites on the same exam.
Okay.
So, you fail that exam. But the problem is that you're writing an exam, and then you have to rewrite an exam, and you also have another exam coming up. So you've got to somehow manage to pass both exams. If you get behind the curve, you're going to be in trouble. University is also very hard, but this was the hardest training that I ever did because of the learning curve.
What made you decide to do this? I mean, were you just a big airplane kind of guy? I mean, you love planes. Why did you decide to become this?
Oh, absolutely. I was in the 1980s. I was got my pilot's license to the Air Cadets, my glider pilots, my private pilots, and I wanted to go in the Air Force. And then I got a prescription for glasses and couldn't go in the Air Force, and didn't have the money to train myself to be a pilot. And I was in CJAD, and I saw a sign, become an air traffic controller. And I was like, I'll give that a try. So I did, and I was successful at the time. It was 24 people were accepted onto the first course out of, I don't know how many thousands of candidates. And that was the beginning of a wave of training in 1990, after they hadn't been hiring for 8 years during the 1980s cutbacks. And now I'm the beginning of a wave of retirements. So as I'm beginning that wave of retirements 35 years in, that's going to continue to occur. So while the company is trying to replace bodies that are going away by attrition, we also have the retirement. We also have natural reasons people may leave a job in any job along the way. So they got to replace a lot of people.
Are you concerned? I mean, when we see and people hear this and think, oh, we know how there have been some incidents. Of course, there always are. But I'm just saying, with respect to not having enough traffic controllers, does that affect a safety issue?
I wouldn't think they would give up on safety before they would give up on the amount of airplanes in the sky. So what that means is that the humans, the air traffic controllers in the system, are always going to operate in a safe manner. But at some point, they're going to say, the system, the company, the managers, the controllers are going to say, we can't control as many airplanes safely as we normally do, and then they cut back. And that's when it hits the news. That's when the news goes, whoa, wait a minute, there's delays. And it hits the news, and that's when suddenly people start to notice. But we've been short for ever since I was working as an air traffic controller. We've been short staff. It just never really hit the news before.
It's interesting, though, because, you kind of tend to think if there's going to be a shortage and it's this hard to apply and we're not hiring people fast enough, is it because you think there's just not as much interest as there was perhaps when you got into this?
No, I don't think so. I think there is interest. There was also a pandemic that hit in about, you know when it hit, 2020.
Yep.
And we had more controllers in training in the system than ever before when the pandemic hit, because we knew that within years we were going to be short-staffed. And that pandemic hit the company in a big way because we're not government in Canada. Air traffic control is a private company, not for profit. But even though you're not for profit, you need money, and the money comes from the airlines, and the airlines weren't flying. So there was a huge let go of people in training during the pandemic, and it was very hard to reattract them to the career afterwards because they were like, they went and found other jobs. And so where they had more trainees than ever in the system at that time, they lost a significant portion, never got some of them back, and now they're hiring as much as they can again. But like I said, it takes a long time to train them, and they're already behind the curve because they're losing people to retirement at this point. And they're always losing people to retirement, but the numbers are down.
Right.
And the more the numbers are down, the harder it is to train because to train somebody, they need to be working in a position with a lot of airplanes. And if you have 3 trainees in a specialty, for example, and each trainee wants to work the busy position, they can't all work that position at the same time. It can only be occupied by one person, you know what I mean? So it's hard to train as many people as you need to train in a short period of time.
Just as we wrap up, I'm curious, too, if someone is listening to this and thinking, wow, this is something I'd like to do, who bears the cost of the training here, by the way?
It is NAV Canada that pays the cost of the training.
So you, as the person training, you're not out of pocket anything here?
No, okay. I'm not speaking for today. I haven't checked in the last 3 months, but it has swung back and forth over time. Mm-hmm. But the last most recent I knew is that the company pays the cost of the training, and they also pay some salary while you're training.
Okay. Oh, okay. And by the way, in case people are interested in this, as you mentioned, it's a fairly lengthy training process. You can imagine you're tied up in this for what, 2 years at least?
I would say you should, if you're thinking of getting into it, you would plan to spend 2 years. Yeah.
Okay. Listen, I very much appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good day.
Oh, wait a second. Just before I let you go, for people saying, well, how do I apply? So you mentioned NAV Canada are the only people doing this, right? That's where you train.
In Canada, there's a couple of other places, companies that do it, but mostly it's NAV Canada in Canada, and you apply at navcanada.ca.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Mr. Wyche. Appreciate it.
Hello, Canada.
This is Bryan Adams Radio. Hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
We'll play a few of mine, a ton of my favorites, and some must-hear behind-the-scenes stories from the world of rock and roll.
I'm coming to get you!
One thing about doing rock and roll so long is you end up meeting a lot of the people that you admire. Sometimes you even get to work with them.
It's only love, and that's all.
Bryan Adams Radio.
I'm coming back to you.
Now available on the free iHeartRadio app.
Everybody, how are you tonight? Sounds great.